All right, drafts are done. You put in all that work. You got solid teams. You're going to get them on the field and start killing everybody in your league. Hopefully you listen to us and you got really good teams. But before we get into it, and Dustin's going to drop some knowledge on you right at the start, you heard us talk about it, the games. It's not over yet. You can sign up any week. Of course, we suggest signing up now. So any week, though, you can win a free t-shirt. You can be entered into a box break whenever after you win. And there's always that grand prize trip to Hawaii.
Oh, boy.
Go ahead, Dustin.
Before we get into all the other stuff for the show, one little bit of advice that we wanted to talk about. You know, everyone, you always hear people say, you got to start your stud guys. You took them in the first few rounds. They get a spot in your starting lineup no matter who they're playing. We agree with that to a point. Yes, you don't want to stray away from starting those guys, but if you're in like a 10-team league and you got a crazy deep bench, it's not the end of the world to bench one of those crazy stud guys if you like one of your matchups on your bench later. We won't call you crazy, and you'll see it later on when we talk about our studs, duds, and sleepers. There's one guy that
foreshadowing.
There's one guy that went in the first round this year that I think is very benchable this week.
All right, well, let's start getting to those forum questions before we get into everyone's favorite time, the stud, duds, and sleepers. But first one comes from C. McGinn. He wants to know, Dustin's got a flex spot question. Manningham versus Washington or Felix Jones at the New York Jets? Who to start?
You know, everyone's kind of hoping this is the year that Felix finally comes into his own and has a great fantasy year. We think it could definitely happen, but we also think it can definitely happen with Manningham as well. Yes. We're big on Manningham this year. We like his matchup against the Redskins. Felix going up against the Jets at the Jets. It's a little scary. I think Manningham...
9-11 as well. There's,
there's a lot going on, but I really like Manningham. I like him for the season. I like him for week 1. I'd go with Manningham. All right, Brent, we got one from Reggie6801. Quarterback question, Tony Romo at the Jets or Freeman versus Detroit? This is a poll on the homepage right now. As of right now, Freeman's ahead at 60%.
I mean, this one's tough. I am a huge Romo believer, but I'm also a really huge Freeman believer. And out of these two, I'm just looking at the defenses, and Jets are better than the Lions. Sure, the Lions should have an improved defense, but it's not nearly there at the Jets. And I think Freeman's going to get you some, bonus yards with his legs. He's going to be sneaking a few more in for touchdowns this year. That didn't happen last year. Romo's got to deal with Revis Island. I got to agree with the community. 60%. I agree. Freeman's the choice. All right, Dustin. Erickson78 wants to know about his flex spot. He's got Floyd versus Minnesota, Jacobs at Washington, or Driver versus New Orleans, and 56%, so by a slight margin, has Floyd as the pick.
I mean, I'm between Floyd and Jacobs on this one. I mean, I do think Floyd has a decent upside this year, but I just really don't think he's going to have that breakout year that people are hoping for. He's still the number 3 option out there. Jacobs at Washington, I think he has a good chance of finding the end zone. I think the Giants are going to... I think they're going to handle that game. I think they're going to handle the Redskins and probably be running a lot in the fourth quarter. And again, I think Jacobs has a good chance of finding the end zone. I think he's the safer play for 8 to 10 points this week.
Yeah, gotta agree.
All right, our last one we're going to go with is XJax90X. Needs to know who to start at his QB2 spot. Colt McCoy versus the Bengals or Kerry Collins at Houston. As of right now, 57% are saying Colt McCoy. Before I pass it over to Brent, I know people are hating on this Indy offense this week without Peyton Manning, but they're still going up against Houston, a team that gave up about 27 points a game, almost 400 yards of offense. They're still going to move the ball. They're still going to move the ball and have decent fantasy numbers.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to have to agree with Dustin. If you watched our shows last year, you heard us say it all the time. Oh, is that receiver playing against the Texans? Yes. Well, then you got to start him. Or the Jags or the other team. Houston or the Jags last year, we were starting everybody against them because they gave up all those points. Sure, the Texans got a new corner, but he's not going to be able to cover the entire field. I agree. I bench Colt McCoy, and I go with Kerry Collins.
Time for our favorite part, our studs, duds, and sleepers. We'll start with my picks. My first one's an easy one for me. Jamal Charles going up against that Buffalo defense. They were terrible against the run last year. I expect them to be terrible again this year. Next, my dud, Ray Rice. That's right, a first-round pick.
Bold.
I think it's totally acceptable
Bold.
to bench him if you have a decent matchup for your other guys. Obviously, you're going to have 3 good matchups if you have a flex spot. But even guys like Moreno against Oakland, Ray Rice, get this 79 total yards between both games combined last year against Pittsburgh. They're good against the run.
Big stat right there.
And my sleeper, Cleveland's defense against my Bengals. Here's the deal. They're going to be attacking the rookie who is trying to throw to a rookie receiver, and his running back gets 3 yards every time he touches the ball. I don't see the Bengals putting up hardly any points against the Browns. I think they're a safe defense pick this week.
My stud, and last year I had Arian Foster as my week 1 stud. Said he'd have his national breakout party. And I think this guy is as well. A lot of people know about him already, but I think he's going to really take it to the next level. And that's Javad Best. He's playing Tampa Bay. Pretty good run D, but I think in a PPR league he's going to be great. I'm calling a minimum of 6 catches with an upward ceiling of 9 catches. My dud is Felix Jones against the Jets. If you watch football, you probably understand why I'm saying that. And then my sleeper is Lance Kendricks, the tight end for the Rams with Sam Bradford throwing the ball, playing the Eagles. Sure, you might be a little scared of the Eagles, but they were dead last against tight ends last year in terms of fantasy, which means they gave up the most fantasy points to tight ends. Lance Kendricks a tight end, do the math. I think he's going to have a pretty good game.
Go Lance. All right, let's get into Mike's picks. His stud is Mike Vick against the Rams. Don't worry about his preseason. He'll be just fine during the regular season. Look for him to have big numbers week 1. His dud, Joe Flacco against Pittsburgh. He's not going to get an argument from me here. You know, Flacco, I think, you know, if you're in a deeper league and you're having to start him this week, you might even want to look for the wire and see if there's any matchups you like better, who might be Michael's sleeper as far as Kerry Collins goes, up against Houston, terrible against the pass. I think it's perfectly acceptable to stick in Kerry Collins over Flacco this week. Not liking the Ravens against Pittsburgh, for good reason.
Yeah.
Who is really?
Probably a low-scoring game.
But that's it for our week 1 show. We love it. It's here. Get into those forums. They've been crazy active. We've been in there as much as we can. Get into those games. I'm Dustin. This is Nameco. I'll see you on my waiver wire show, which will be up Monday night.
Good luck week 1, everybody. We're pulling for you. Unless you're playing me.